Okay, here's another big one. JavaScript Dojo objects. This is again where a lot of people fall off, but everything should start making sense. I did go ahead and put together kind of a conceptual idea to connect a bunch of these ideas that we've been going over together in this object one because it's very useful. So objects and properties. And this is going to be one where you're going to say, what's the difference between an object? What's the difference between a property? Well, object, similar to like the way you would see a function in braces, is it's a variable, which we look at here, that's now holding an object. So instead of a list, it's holding key and value pairs. So key value. So this name equals Alice. That's the key is name, and the value is a string Alice. And age, and the value is 30, is student false. So if you were to console.log person.name, what does that mean? Person.name is Alice. So if you're looking at that, that is the property of this object. So constant person created it as an object. That's kind of the syntax you would see for that in JavaScript. And you may have it called something else in another language. Some even call that like a different type of an array. So console.log person and then age 30. So bracket notation. You can still call it as if it were, remember how we did that for the index? It's basically saying the first one, you're almost calling the index name and then age. But typically you'll see it in JavaScript with person.name. And modifying objects, there's really three main things you can modify. Person.age, so you can equal, so you could actually modify the age of Alice, of this object. So you're updating it to 31. Person.job equals developer, so that one doesn't exist. So what it's doing is adding another property, so it would be a fourth one below this. And delete person is student would just remove that altogether. And they all come in handy for various reasons. And what's a method? So a method, you're going to have to remember, is just a function that's inside of the object. So when it's actually, you're creating like a whole blanket and all the fabric that's being woven, or the squares, those could be the objects. I don't know the best way to describe that. But console.log cat.meow, and the difference between property when you're calling it and the object, which is the function, you're going to have the function call, which you're used to seeing the parentheses right next to the name. So if there were a parameter that was needed, you would have that during this part. So Whiskers says meow. So console.log cat.meow function. What does the function do? Real simple. It returns this .name, which is Whiskers. And it didn't really talk about this, but that's the convention of what is happening within the object. So this .name, because you're inside, it's a method of this construct, basically, of this object, says meow. So it's doing all of this when you're calling that function within that, returning this, which calls this, and it's a return, but it's on a print. So this is what would print out. Whiskers says meow. Now you can deconstruct objects. So constant name, comma, age equals person. And then we would see console.log name is Alice. And I did a better kind of visual for this on the next page, not for the deconstructing, but the interesting part is you see how it has the curly braces. That's how you know it's deconstructing the actual object. And you can deconstruct lists or arrays is in JavaScript. So let's look at that. I don't know how visible it's going to be. Let me see if you can see this on your screen. Yeah, right at the bottom, you can barely see it. Let me see if I can come up with this. This one here is what we're looking at. So if you're deconstructing and it's a list, see how it has the brackets instead of the curly braces? So if you're deconstructing a list that was 10 and 20, it's basically assigning 10 to A and B to 20. So console.log A would show 10, console.log B is 20. So it's basically ripping apart the list or ripping apart the object, if you want to look at it like that. So if we go back and say, okay, well, we're looking at objects today, and they're constructing the person. So the person, if it had a name and an age, if it had two categories, it would pull the person and put it would leave the object alone, but it would deconstruct them. So now these variables would be name equals Alice, age equals whatever the age was. Okay, so let's look at this. The deconstruction part, just know that you can separate it out. It's almost like exploding it, so you can have everything pulled out immediately. But I wanted to kind of combine the object with the if statement and with a few things that we've just learned over the last couple of weeks. So what I did here is I started off by creating the object. So an object, when you're looking at this in the real world, let's just say you have a program that's tracking, it's a school system, and it's tracking Alice, and she's applying for a bunch of different schools, and she's 17, but the rule at a few of the schools, let's say, is 18. So if we console.log, which I already did up here, Alice is 17. Okay, we've created an object, name Alice, age 17, console.log person. It prints out both of those. If I were to console.log, and then I actually used person dot name, then instead of printing out the whole object, what would it do? Let's see, I'll block this one here. So we're just wanting to see the name that's in our person. Run, it does Alice. Okay. Interesting enough. Okay, so now I created a function because we already went over functions. It's all of this, and none of this code runs unless the function is called. But what I did in here is it says if person.age, which right now she's 17, but if she's ever equal or greater than 18, person.isStudent true, person.school Yale, delete person is student, console.log, congrats on the new phase. So if she ever gets approved to the school and she's the right age, and this is where maybe she was accepted, but she just can't go until she's old enough, else person is student equals false, and she has a temporary job. So let's take a look at this here. So if I say we're doing an age test right now, so we're going to run this function once, age test person.age. So if we run this, nothing has changed other than it's still printing this original one. Now, if we console.log though, since the function is already ran, all of this code has already tried to run. So we know she's under 18 still, so what would happen with this information? So if I console and log that now, let's look here. Now it's printed the original console log, but it also, this is part of her object now. So is she a student yet? False. Does she have a temp job? Oh, she has a temp job. Okay. So none of this has happened yet, but person.isStudent equals false. Since that wasn't on the original call, that is the add method. So it's adding another part to the object, excuse me. And then person.tempJob equals true. So both of these, if we go back to the lesson, we're modifying the object. So person.age, we were using this to update or this to add a new property. And then pretty soon we're going to use delete. So if we keep going along, and so we did the age test, we added, which ran the function, and this function can be reused again. So what we did here is, okay, she had a birthday. So now if I run this, nothing's changed, but person.age has changed, but nothing is reran, the function hasn't reran yet. So here we'll do another age test, say the school's checking, and we run this, what happens? So since we actually have the console.log in there, it says congrats on the next phase of your life. So let's look at this at each line again. So if we run the code, the first one is the console.log here, and then the program ran down here and did the age test in console.log. She was not a student and she had a temp job. And then her birthday, what happened? She turned 18, it changed the age, it added the temp job because she still has the temp job, and school is Yale. So we could even stay, because we deleted is student. So what we probably should do is person is student is true. Let's see. Person.isStudent equals true. Temp job equals true. Console.log, congrats on the new phase. School is Yale. Person.isStudent equals true. Let's see here. So how do we edit? Because we know isStudent was false. Oh, we had it delete. So we deleted what we want to do. That's how you remove it. But I have I have both of them in there. This is good. Now if we rerun it, boom, congrats on your next phase of life. isStudent is true. She still has the temp job. You could say, okay, after, if you're doing this as just a tracker, does she have a job? Does she not? So later on, go in and actually have it remove that. So, okay, we've used the function. We used the if statement. We've deconstructed lists, which you do the same way with objects. It's just a little more syntax there. And let's go through the test here, or the program. Continue. Okay, how do you access the color property of the object car? So object is the whole thing, the item value pairs. And let's look, or key value pairs is what they call them. So how do you access the property? Car and that arrow symbol. Car, color. Okay, well, we can access it. One of the ways is with the index. Car.color was correct, and you could use the dot notation as well. So let's see here. You can also use, so it's kind of giving us both options. Neat. Okay. So create an object book with properties title. So here we're going to create an object book. So we know we're going to have to define book. We're going to want the property title, a string, pages, a number, and a method, which is a function that returns a string like title X has X pages, and then log the book summary, which they've already book.summary, so it's logging the function, which we're going to write within the method, or the method within the object. So first, let's create the object. I'll just do this live with you so you can see any glitches or bad times here. But object, so we'll call const book equals, and the object syntax is the curly braces. So let's just do this here. And I like to tab mine on this one. Okay, so what do we need here? Object with the property title. So let's just make a title here. So title, let's see here. Title, and so the key value pair, title, what's a good title? Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's the first thing that popped in there. Excuse me. And quotes, and then we'll do comma. And what was the other thing? Pages. Pages. And then you have to have the semicolon, pages, and it's a number, so we don't need the quotes. So we'll say there's 220 pages, the longest Mary Had a Little Lamb you'll ever read. Okay, 220. And so we've got that. And then it's saying, okay, we need to have the function. So let's see here. One thing I don't remember on the syntax when we're creating the function within the object, I'm going to run back and look, but is, do we still declare it as function? I think we do, but let's go here. Back. No, we don't. We just actually make the object. You don't have to say function object. So when you're within an object, it looks like it's going to just know that that's the method. Okay, so let's go forward here. Okay, create this. Let me just get rid of, we don't need that notes anymore. Okay, so this is the object we're working on. Let me expand this in case we need to see a little more of that. So pages 220. Okay, so summary, and what does it want us to do as part of that? And again, we do curly braces for our functions. So within that, this is the they call it a method, but it's a function inside of the object. Okay, so let's look again. It returns a string like this, and then log the book summary. Okay, so, oops, I got a second one of those there. Let's take a peek here. So, return title has X pages. So let's do return. And then we could use, did they use this or self? Return this. I'm just going to go with it. There's different, I use this and self depending on the programming languages, Python or PHP. So I'm going to try this, but you're basically saying this what? So this, let's do dot title. Return this dot title. And then let's see if we can do it like this. Has X pages. So has plus this dot pages, because we're trying to call pages here to see if it'll print. It's going to take this and return this to the function, but then it's trying to print the book summary. You're calling the method directly from the object. So book object dot summary. This dot pages has this dot pages plus the word pages. Okay, so this might work. So this dot title has, so Mary Had a Little Lamb, it should call that. Has, because we want to, basically make it look like this. The title has X, whatever the pages are. Okay, let me check and see, run code. Unexpected error, identifier, summary. So it's probably self then. Let me check self. Self, or this language doesn't let me use plus on a return. So let me just see here. Okay, so summary. No, that looks good. Okay, let me copy all this again, and let's go look back again and see how they used it. Oh, it is this, and it did let them use plus. So meow, const. Okay, because I didn't use that. Let's find out. I never claimed to be a professional at this one, right? Okay, so if I print this, so I didn't close off that one with one of those, And it was this, so I was right, it's not self, it's this. This instance of the object you're calling. Pages. Make this a little bigger again. Does that? Error, unexpected identifier, summary. All right, so I better take all of this and run it in case this is just a program glitch. Let me run it in the sandbox. So let me clear all this, reset that, put this code over here and see what happens. Okay, why is summary, what did I do wrong here? Getting the same error, so we know that it's legit. If you figured it out before me, I'm sorry. Let me go back again. Okay. So we've named the const. Name equals whiskers, comma. And then we opened return this dot name, says meow. Has that, has that. Okay, let me take a peek again. Okay, this is always good to find. I found it here, so I didn't close that one. I had an open brace instead of a closed brace. All right, so now if we run it, let's see. Well, I thought I found the issue. Let's print that there. Okay, so open, closed, return this dot title has plus this dot pages plus pages. Okay, well sometimes you feel like an idiot here, but I can kind of see it. I don't know if you've already seen it, but we didn't put a comma here, so it doesn't know that it's actually part of the object. So it's like running on here from that. So that might be the solution. Mary Had a Little Lamb has 220 pages. I didn't include any spaces, so we need to say, okay, Mary Had a Little Lamb has, so it'll keep the string spaces, X amount of pages. So now if I run it again, has 220, so I guess we need a space on both sides of has. Mary Had a Little Lamb has 220 pages. Now let's see if that actually will pass the test. So let's go forward here. Run code. Boom, it worked. Excellent. Okay, fill in the blank. Destructuring to extract name and age from user. So we're destructuring. Why do I keep saying destructing? Okay, so we did it with lists and we did it with objects, but we know we've got the age and we just need to get name, so it would just be name. So it'll actually put the name of the user into that variable and age into that variable, so it's destructuring it. So let's check answer. That's correct. Okay, inside an object method, which we know is a function, this refers to, like I was talking about self and this, but it refers to this instance. So the previous method call, nothing, the window, the object the method belongs to. So that instance of the object, because in your program you can actually use that object once you've created it more than once, because it's a const, but then you're creating another use of it. So you might look at it similar to a class in Python, built in, mixed with an array. And then in PHP, you might call an array what we're looking at here, but it doesn't have methods because that would be part of the object. So depending on the language you're using, the verbiage matters, but within that instance, you're going to use the method that belongs to that object. So we created summary during that test, and we know it belongs. That's what this is referring to. So this dot whatever is referring to that instance inside of the method. Whew, we made it through today. I bet you're more confused than ever, but hopefully you followed along, and we'll just get better from here. I'm going to get this posted, and I hope you enjoy it. And as always, thanks for watching. And the next series I do, I'm not sure whether I'm going to do N8N for automation and AI. I've been doing a lot with that. but also I might as well do a Python course, and I'll try to be a little more organized and just be fully solid on each concept. I feel like I can do that with Python a little easier, and there's a lot less syntax in Python, which is why people say it's a good one to start with. But if you're learning JavaScript and you have a good reason, web development, backend, or any of the other apps, or any of the other things it can be used for, that's exciting. But we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.